We have a bit of a crisis as women. We're told to attain status in the world, to seek equality with men. And then if we seek equality, we lose the dramatic push and pull that's necessary to have relationships with people and intimate relationships with people. So the challenge for women, and I think this is why a lot of them are so terrified, is that we've been, and I speak for myself too, we get pushed through the social arena to prepare us to go out and achieve status in environments where men are also trying to achieve status. We're competing with them in those environments. I mean, I'm basically saying that the equality kills intimacy.
Yes. Maybe we're moving into being able to talk about our women's hierarchy problem. We'll have to, can we sneak up on it instead of announcing it directly? Women think they want to play the hierarchy game, and they really don't. They want to win, and they cheat because they're not, in fact, competing on the same terms that the men are, ever. And this holds in all situations, right? We do cheat in men's terms because we have well, it's like what's interesting when I was reading this about the high status, don't come near me, don't bite me, I'm not worth the trouble. Women will be in high status and then play low status very quickly of don't hit me. I say this as a fencer. And I'd say this having done it as a fencer, right? I've gotten hit really hard by a man and said, you can't hit me that hard, I'm a woman. Which is unfair to them because they're there to fence, right? But when they're fencing me, they can't fence me like they fence another guy of, their same age and ability. So there's, I mean, I recognize that I've become pirate-like, much more aware of these kinds of status interactions, male to female, precisely because I'm doing it at this physical level of martial art, which makes a lie of all the social pretense that we are competing on equal terms, because we're not. I have weapons they don't have and they can't use, one of which is don't hit me, I'm a girl. I mean, that's what we wanted, right? It's like, here we are, we're educated women, we're talking about things we've thought about, and we clearly can think, I hope, unless my IQ is wrong, that education is this thing that keeps messing up the status structures. Buzzsaw Bear, a mother is more valuable than any job. The degradation or disparagement of that job is criminal. We were trying to do just the slipperiness of status interactions in this exercise, and figuring out where the women fit in it is another problem altogether. But I do think that men and women's repertoire of exchanges is not identical. And what I saw in that DCR conversation, you felt what you're describing now is you were being asked to be compassionate and therefore equal. I saw it saying you were meant to be a cheerleader.
Okay.
You were meant to be looking at the men's striving for excellence in this particular way, and for you to say, go guys. Particular exchange was upsetting because you weren't being the supportive role that was hoped for. You were in fact continuing to engage in the combative role, which was, dude, you're not doing what you think you're doing.
Yeah.
They wanted you out of the game.
I was in pirate
You were
mode.
Well, they wanted you out of the interaction because the claim was you don't belong in deciding what this hierarchical situation means, and you were trying to say it means everything to me, because if men cannot live according to this hierarchy and establish themselves as responsible and protective, I as a woman am doomed, because there's nobody that's going to be able to take care of me when I'm a mother.
Yes.
And Bugs is dressed as a hunter, and Elmer is dressed as a rabbit for reasons that I don't know, right? But the absolute, the hunter is now the hunted, and the rabbits outwitted the hunter. But it's funny, and we like that, and we like the feeling of release in the inversion.
Yes, there's release. Like there's a comedic release of tension. And I think this is where I didn't like being put in the cheerleader role, circling back to that, because it links to this. because if I get taken out of the if it's like getting taken out of the comedy of it, you know, because if you're told don't be Bugs Bunny and don't be Elmer Fudd, just stand on the sideline and cheer them both, then there's no involvement in the comedy. So it's
yeah.
you know what I mean? So it's like then you're not involved in the inversion anymore. You're passively watching the inversion and you're not involved in the comedy, and it's kind of like
we have found it. We found the problem for the women and men. This is it. Great. We came at it from another direction and there it is. No.
Thanks, Looney Tunes.
With the Looney Tunes. That's it. Because no, just like you perfectly described it, because one, this is a little bit behind the scenes, but it was really fun in writing tonight, right? And I was teasing you a lot because like we needed to get the energy right for tonight. And the sort of banter of the creative troupe, which I think is why I started with the improv stuff sounds so much fun, and it is fun. We're here, with Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd, and they're reporting on the day that they met each other and switched roles. And if you say, something that just blocks that, nothing goes anywhere, right? Whereas if you say, Bugs, what do you think about that? You sort of get into the scene and accept the premise of the silliness and talk about it, that there is, that this is this kind of status exchange, this sort of joy of the fall and the actual game is, we've had long conversations about what where the recess at Bellum is, where's the joy and the laughter in the fight that we're in, and the ability to stay joyful, and the ability to it's in, as you and I have often talked, it's in these status inversions that we're able to say, I don't need to hold the status of the one that always had the answer. I can learn from you because you have an answer that I didn't know. I don't need to stay permanently in the status interaction of the one being in control of the room because so-and-so is acting up, but I can play with you for a little bit. I mean, it's like moms, so we're Buzzsaw Bear is, well, Buzzsaw Bear and Mel are talking about skiing. That moms with their children are having to play a lot of status inversions too, because you need to take care of the child and be protective of it, but also be playful. What women want when they're seeing men play, I can say this, is we want to be part of that playing. So I want to be a fencer, I want to be in the game, but I can't quite play the way they do. And women often have a difficulty with the kind of status inversions that men are comfortable with in their play. I did this in the Lobster Side cartoon that I did about men and women's games, when the toys are playing and the women come in and wreck the game. And it's the men's game in the game. I mean, even in Trading Places, right? They have to be willing to lose. It's what you were describing about the risk of the floor, and it needs to be fun, and it needs to, it's like you're there, you're actually risking something real. You may lose everything. And the men's game set up situations where real loss in the game can happen. And women, and I will say this bluntly, and therefore, in academia, we don't like getting bad grades. We don't want to be in a situation where we can actually fail. So we tend to set up things, maybe we're nest building, right? We don't want the risk, right? You don't want to have the risk of everything falling apart. And so I can't risk that. No risk, which is why the trope of a Karen or something is the kindergarten teacher. Make sure that there's absolutely no risk for anybody. Men want the snakes and ladders, or at least they should. And that they're not going to get to magnificent excellence without a real risk. And those of us who like seeing men succeed want them to take it.
Yeah, which is what I was trying to explain. I don't want to be on the side watching a game and saying, oh, how horrible.
You're saying women sabotage these games constantly, typically.
In which ways?
Well, I don't see you sabotaging them. So our impulses to be in the game don't match theirs exactly. And we sabotage them. I certainly see the sabotage constantly in the internet stuff, which is so I was actually explaining to a friend in the dog park, Gamergate. Remember Gamergate? Anybody in the room old enough to remember
Ancient
Gamergate?
history.
The ancient history that in fact brought all of these actors together, right? It's how Milo met Vox.
Yes.
And that all of the guys, when Milo was doing his campus tour, were there in the college audiences saying thank you, thank you, thank you. It's because the gamers had felt like the women who were sleeping with the journalists who then wrote good reviews of their terrible games were cheating. And the gamers were frustrated because they're saying, no, stop cheating. You don't get good reviews for a crappy game. You should have to go through it at the same level we do, which is do a good game and then you get a good review and then it's real. Whereas the way in which you've brought your sexual politics into this review situation is you've corrupted the entire system, because now we can't trust the journalism. I mean, we should go to Johnny Depp and his, every time the men come in, marry someone, and then give her favors because they're associated with her, people get upset. It happened in medieval courts. It happened in the Reformation. It's and that's why with Elizabeth in power, she couldn't get married because that would switch things up. But it meant that she kept all of them trying to give her favors, I suppose. I'm not sure what you do with a woman in power. It's complicated. Actually, we could think about that. We could do women in power for another episode.
Yes.
See our glee, the glee of the thought of the bringing the high status down for him. There is no sympathy. Oh, no, I have no idea. Why would I do that? So I think...
Well, I was thinking more in the sense that when the girls are wrecking the game, what they're doing is they're undoing the attempt of that costume swap in order to have those like status inversions.
Yes,
women are highly uncomfortable with sudden changes in status and the inversions of these roles, because we look to established hierarchies to establish our own identities. Unpopular opinion, but it's true. We look to established hierarchies to create our own identities. Women can't do it independently like men do. So in this Taming of the Shrew story, we have the men quite comfortable inverting themselves, inverting their status, exchanging their status, going from high to low and low to high, because of the end goal, which is the mission of marry the shrew off. All right, free up Bianca, right. Then get the master to marry Bianca. So it's gaming. There's an explicit mission, and they're all happy to strategically change status and invert their status in order to get the outcome that they want. Women don't play like that.
What do we do?
There's not slapstick. There's seduction involved in the way that we play games. See, I feel odd saying we when I'm saying this out loud, because when Pigeon becomes Peacock, I go into male mode. That's a male peacock. That's not a hen. Right. It's a cock. But it's slapstick, so it's comedic. It's not seductive. And good gaming is slapstick. And that's why Gamergate happened. They were angry because suddenly seduction had been introduced into a slapstick environment. Yep.
Okay, so the slapstick is the acceptance of a game where you can be embarrassed, but the like sports, right? I think the women have horribly corrupted men's sports. With therefore the jokes about how the men are taking over women's sports are I did actually do a blog post some time ago about Title IX called Boys with Tits, because women getting into collegiate sports was in fact wanting to turn them into men, because they were mainly playing men's sports. So there's that problem, but it's hard for women to be in that sport environment and not flip it into the seduction.
See, I think tomboys understand somehow, speaking of the peacock thing, but the tomboy anomaly is that these are girls that do not want to play the seduction element. They want to play slapstick. Right. Tomboys are delaying their entrance into the world of seduction, not just sexual, but in terms of having that kind of game. they still want to play with the boys like boys. They invert. That's why they're clownish.